Okay, here we are with this week's Northern Mixed Prairie list. Thing to note, we've got all perennial, we've got all natives. The only difference is we've got 4 that are warm season, several that are cool season, and 1 that's an evergreen. These 2 are both sage varieties, or sage species. Silver sage is the one that's evergreen. Fringe sage is only cool season. So maybe you just want to memorize the 4 grasses that are warm season grasses in this northern mixed prairie. That's kind of why we call it, one of the reasons we call it mixed prairie is because of its mixed constituents of warm and cool season plants. Okay, first one on the list, Schizocarium scoparium little bluestem. So here we have the seed head of little bluestem. We've got these. So we have racemes that are on peduncles. So this thing is a peduncle that holds that raceme. So that's where our florets are. We have several of them along the seed head. This one's a warm season, but it still grows well in northern climates. We can grow it well here. I've seen 2 or 3 places around town that have little bluestem. Little brother to big bluestem. We'll just pretend like that's true. And it has the same coloring, so very purple oranges when it's cured. So that is sort of seed head and coloring. The other thing you need to know is that it has a decumbency down here, and you remember decumbent, we've covered it a couple times, and that is the stems are going to lay along the ground and then grow upwards from there. They may have rhizomes, they may not. This sample, most of these don't have rhizomes, but you may encounter some that do. The next one is blue grama. Incidentally, little bluestem is a great forage species for a lot of different kinds of wildlife and livestock, so good feed value. Bouteloua gracilis, kind of like Grace Illis, but no E. Blue grama, the distinctive characteristic we've seen, but Boutelouas before genus, and this is a lot like it. So we've seen hirsuta and hair grama and black grama, and the thing that distinguishes blue grama, we have a pretty long, slender comb here for its seed head. The raceme is comb-like, but there's no extension. There's no extension of that. The rachis past that. Past the end of this seed head. So that's sort of the key. The other ones that we've learned have extended that either more or less out past that raceme. Other than that, this is the only one that looks anything like a grama this week. Again, also good feed value. Next one, buffalo grass. And yeah, we'll use this one. So buffalo grass, again, is a warm season grass. Buffalo grass is really cool, even though you can't see it right here. It looks almost like annual roots. Buffalo grass is one of the plants that we often reference in plant morphology because it has a root system that is really, really big, usually 10 times the amount of shoot biomass we have in root biomass. It's a really good survivor in drought situations, good forage. Doesn't provide as much forage, so there's not as much biomass on buffalo grass compared to a lot of the other species we're learning this week, and a lot of the other species that are in this area. I'm going to see if I can get that glare off of there. That doesn't help any. So we'll do something like that. Buchloe dactyloides is how you say the Latin name, Buchloe dactyloides. Cool thing about this one, it is stoloniferous, so it's got stolons, and you can see in your notes dioecious, which means male and female plants are separated out. And so you see on B on your sheet it says male head like small blue grama, female like burrs and leaf axils. So this is the male plant. You can see that seed head looks a little bit like blue grama, a smaller version of blue grama, and that's the male. It's going to release pollen. And then over here, right in, and you'll have to look when you see these, some of them are more pronounced than others of the samples that we've got. This, it looks like this bulge in here, and that's actually the female flower and what will be the buffalo grass seed. Buffalo grass, there's that. Next one, Prairie Sand Reed. Prairie Sand Reed. Calamovilfa longifolia, perennial native, warm season. A decent forage, depends on when you're actually using it for grazing. Stout rhizome. So on this sample has one there. This sample has even better examples. So you can see how they're pretty thick. That's what we mean by stout. So thicker rhizomes that are going to spread out and do reproduction in that way. Panicle seed head, kind of an open seed head. That's all we'll say about that. Pretty distinctive in terms of the triangularity of that seed head this week, different than most of our other species. So Prairie Sandreed. Those four are the perennial native warm season. The next section we're going to get into is the cool season. The cool season plants. This is needle and thread. Okay, Hesperostipa comata. Hesperostipa comata. Perennial native cool season. Good forage. Good survivor out in arid conditions that we may have in regions that are northern mixed prairie. The distinguishing feature of this is actually the awn. So all these little wiry things are an awn on those the spikelets. Okay, so they come out and they sort of twist around. The other thing to note about the seed head that your notes point out are that the inflorescence looks almost always like it's tucked down into the top of this stem. Okay, so your notes say head partly enclosed in sheath. So this last sheath of this last leaf, it looks like it's stuck down in there and hasn't quite fully emerged yet. These awns tend to stay on this plant for a pretty long time. So you can see these out in the field. You can sometimes see these awns out in the field, especially if they're tucked away in that last sheath. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because that's a pretty distinctive feature for all of the samples that we have. The next one is Indian ricegrass. Where are you, Indian ricegrass? Oh, there it is. Okay. So Indian ricegrass, again, pretty distinctive. The seed head is pretty distinctive. We've got a really, really open panicle seed head. Here you can see one that's just emerging from the sheath. But open panicle type seed head. Your notes say good forage, perennial native cool season, good forage. Stipa hymeneoides. Stipa hymeneoides. Remember, we're always saying that DES at the end as Ds. The seed head, pretty neat. Has these little, and it's called Indian ricegrass because legend tells of Native Americans who actually would harvest these seeds and use it as a grain. They're pretty high starch seeds inside there, black seeds inside there. And again, this does really well. Even in our climate that only gets 7 inches of precip a year, this can do really well. It can produce a lot of seed on it. On A on your notes, it says panicle open dichotomous. And what that's talking about is that when we have this panicle open up, one of the things it does is it kind of branches and branches and branches. So here's a branch that goes off into 2 right there. Then it branches off again into 2. Then this branch goes off into 2. Then that branch goes off into 2. So it's always pairing off into 2s, dichotomous die for 2. Okay. Good forage for all of our wildlife and livestock. Next one, western wheatgrass. So we have that sample right here. Elymus smithii. Elymus smithii. Excuse me. Rhizomatous number 1. So you can see the rhizomes that are formed down here. Your notes say spikelets overlapping about half. And what that means is you've got a spikelet here, and then you've got another one start over here, and it's about halfway up that next one. Sorry, halfway up that next one starts. So it gives it that tucked in look. Says some stuff about glooms, but we can't really see that. Strongly ribbed leaves. If you're looking at this one, this sample, what you want to look at is on that leaf blade, the actual blade, you can see pretty significant striping. So it looks, the veins stand out a lot more than normal. So that's western wheatgrass. We'll be done with that one. Next one is skunk bush sumac, ruse, R-H-U-S, ruse aromatica. So just remember, skunks are aromatic. And there's your trick, skunk bush sumac, ruse aromatica. It's a dioecious shrub. Dioecious is going to mean that these leaves are going to fall when the plant's going into the dormant season. Red berries are distinctive there. Perennial native, cool season in terms of its growth characteristics. Leaves are alternate and they're trifoliate. So actually the other sample's a little bit better here. So here you can see that we have alternating leaves and the leaves themselves are trifoliate. So this is a good example. 1, 2, 3. Right there. There's one here, 1, 2, and then 3 back there. So when you look at this, it's more. It has a trifoliate leaf. So each 3 leaflets are one single leaf, and those leaves themselves are alternately arranged on the plant. Yellow flowers. So this one actually does a really good job. It's one of the few forbs and shrubs that we've got that have really decent flowers on it. You can see those yellow flowers on there. Distinctive yellow goes to red, right? Okay, silver sage, Artemisia cana or cana, either one. You can say it however you want. Artemisia cana. So Artemisias are going to be our sage family. So we'll learn at least one of those species of sage, and it also will be an Artemisia. Artemisia. That's with the I. A-R-T-E-M-I-S-I-A. Really, really good forage, especially for wildlife, and especially in the off-season. Holds its forage value really, really well. Perennial native, evergreen. Leaves are entire. You'll remember the margins being entire. They're lanceolate or linear leaves. That's distinguishing it from other sagebrush varieties. May or may not have rhizomes. Our samples don't have the rootstock. If you see this out in the field, it may have rhizomes in it. Leaves canescent. That canescence, really what that means is pubescence or a hairiness, a feltiness on it. Canescence is pretty normal for sage species. Our last sage is fringed sage. Fringed sage. And we'll get this sample right here, and then we'll take a look at another sample. So this is Artemisia frigida, perennial native, cool season, whereas silver sage was evergreen. And you can see, you need to look close here, and you'll see that the leaf structure is fringe-like. That's why it's called fringe sage. It's a half shrub, which means it's got some woody material followed by herbaceous material every year. A mat former, so if you see this out on the range, instead of looking upright like this, it's going to move along the ground. It's going to be sometimes a big tuft on the ground. That's how it will grow. Your notes say taller flower stalk, and so here this sample is pretty good. So you can see how down here at the bottom it's growing along the ground, and then when it's time to produce seed, it'll send up a pretty tall seed stalk that will hold the inflorescence on here. This one doesn't have one. Some of our other samples have them. They're pretty fragile. Here's one. So this one's got both the stem with leaves on it and the inflorescence there as well. But the inflorescence really kind of just pops up, and it's distinguishable from the rest of it. Okay, that's this week's material. I'll leave the sheets on here, and you can pick them up and study, study, study.